So welcome to another war game review from theplayersaid.com. My name's Alexander.
And I'm Grant.
And today we're taking a look at, let me get this correct, The Struggle for Zorn, The Red Blight, from Blue Panther.
Or colon.
Colon. It's the same word, just pronounced differently.
Pronounced. Yeah.
So
you said this was a war game review.
Yeah.
Isn't this a fantasy game?
It is a fantasy war game,
Oh,
yes.
okay.
Funnily enough...
Pretty rare,
yeah.
really.
Yes, sure.
Yeah.
I would like more of them.
There's more of them out there, but it is more of a rare thing.
But I also think we're kind of in a bump of a few, right?
Yeah.
We've got a couple out or coming out very soon.
And we played both those few this past weekend.
Yeah.
Both of them.
And then even we've got a reprint of Divine Right coming out too. So
True,
I think
yep.
we got some nice, cool fantasy war games coming up. So, The Struggle for Zorn, The Red Blight, is designed by Herman Luttman and, let me get this right, Fred Manzo and Ryan Heilman.
Yep, they
so
all
it's a
have
big
design
team.
credits, yep.
So this is, okay.
And it's from Blue Panther.
Yes, it is their publishing. Sure, they printed it as well, but it's through their own publishing house. Now, I'm going to say this is a cooperative war game. Is there a competitive mode to it too?
So it is titled as a semi-cooperative.
Oh, that's right. One person wins.
But the scenario we played the other day was an all or nothing. So none of us, I believe, were going to win on our own.
Yeah.
I think we all would have won together. But there are modes or scenarios, and there's a bunch of scenarios in that box where it's, you're working together, you can all lose together.
Yeah.
But you're trying to score the most, I think they call them valor points or something like that.
So it's one of those games where, we're not fighting. We're all fighting the same host.
But you can.
Oh, you can?
You can actually, there's a rule in there for PN.
Where we just do a bit.
Right, so if you're ahead, I might try to attack you because I want to get whatever, that next unit or that next treasure or relic.
But if you do it too much, you'll get overwhelmed because you'll be weaker and everyone will die.
Yeah, I mean...
So you have to be careful.
It's a little fragile. I felt like our units were fairly fragile, right? The monsters were very powerful. We were powerful too, but just... Yeah, if you did a lot of that, you're going to be in trouble.
You can't... Yeah, right. You'll all lose.
Yeah.
So... But the premise of this is it's this fantasy world, and on the board, which is pretty neat, you have, you'll have a section of guys, I'll have a section of guys, and you can have up to 4 players, and then you play against this kind of oncoming wave of hordes of these red blight monsters, basically.
Yeah, so in many ways it is a tower defense. They do follow kind of columns, for lack of a better word.
It ends up looking like that anyway.
But you can actually switch over from column to column. If you've killed all the monsters, there's no reason to really worry about that one. But if one guy gets off the board, particularly in the scenario we played, you're gonna lose.
Yes, yeah.
And that's scary because a couple times I was like, oh, they're gonna run.
So we played this at Buckeye Game Fest. You and I played, Ryan Heilman played, and then the game was kind of GM'd by Herman. Whose I think original kind of brainchild this was.
Yeah.
So that was a really neat experience just to do it with those guys who are very knowledgeable about it as well, because the on-ramp was very easy from that standpoint.
Yes.
But,
whereas I think normally it's a little bumpy, only because there are a lot of rules and a lot of little steps.
But I weirdly, I didn't think it was that bad.
And it's because Herman was really helping us.
Yeah. But
I'm just saying the first couple times you're going to have to get up to speed.
Especially if you add the good stuff, which they tried, but that, there's the magic part of it, right?
Yeah.
So you got this kind of traditional, I'm going to move my guys, they have an attack value, they have a range value, they have a movement value. Cool, that's very intuitive if you've played war games. But then you add in, you have a leader and you have a magic user, and then there's a little magic kind of subsystem where you roll to see if you even cast a spell.
And more often than not, you fail.
And then you cast the spell, and what that looks like, that breaks a lot of the rules as well. Those are really fun. And you usually have a little choice between the two spells that you have.
So and those spells can be very, very powerful.
Oh, very, yes.
The one I had was I can't remember what it was called, but I rolled a 20-sided die, and I think I rolled a 15, which that's a lot of damage. But some of them are also teleports or... swap place. It's just kind of cool,
I think I had
tactical
one that was
stuff.
it could move people around on the board, and I had one that was like an attack.
Yeah.
And that, I think that's one of the really neat parts of this game is anytime you've got a fantasy game, the kind of the world is your oyster as a designer. And what they did with this is that they have all these different kind of kingdoms, which have a different kind of complexion and makeup of units with their own special abilities in them. Some of them are crossover and some of them are the same.
Right.
But you then also have all of your magic users and all of your leaders, and there's more in a box. And you just slide those on. So it's one of those games where you have pretty much an infinite combo that you can do just to like have different looking armies and stuff. And I really like that.
And that's really cool.
That.
Yeah. Only because it's just going to make each experience that much different.
Yeah.
In addition to the many scenarios that you have to choose from, you can choose different houses, different leaders, and the different magic users. That always is going to get your value up out of a box.
Well, and you know, it's also one of those games where I think it being fantasy or not historical, it lends itself very easily to being able to do expansions, right?
Yeah.
You can always throw more stuff in or change this or add this. That's really easy to do with, whereas with historical games, you might be more limited in what you can do, so to speak. So I really liked that part of it because I felt like, even though some of our units may have looked the same on the board, the leaders and the spellcasters and their abilities
very different
what you guys were doing over there versus what I was doing.
Yeah,
and that was really neat. And then you add on top of that the pretty significant variety of the red blight enemies, right?
Yeah.
They have like big standees, which are like really strong guys.
Kind of their heroes.
And then they have lots of little kind of plebs, but even within those, they have a lot of different variety. Some of them are like just kind of sit there and are defensive. Some of them run up, but they're not very strong. Some of them are just really strong, but they might be a bit slower.
Yeah.
And there's all sorts of priorities to how they act and when they act based on a card deck, basically. So, you know, when something might be threatening you, if they don't activate, you like get that little breather, but they're still a huge threat, and you might have to try to go through them. That had a ton of variety, even just on the board. The guys you were fighting, very different from the guys that I was fighting, for example.
It's very true, yep.
And then it's how you were fighting them with your units. It was really cool seeing so much on the board that was enjoyable and fun and different and creative. And also, Herman taught it, but it wasn't as complex as maybe I thought it was going to be.
Right.
Where,
but there is a lot there.
Oh yeah.
There are resources. There's gold. There are relics that you can get and use. There are mercenaries that you can acquire. All of those things just add another layer of interest and another layer of depth. One of the parts that I thought was the best was in each of the houses' makeup of their general armies. There was 12 units, I believe, and you can ultimately have, I thought, our scenario at least.
Yeah, you can't take them all.
Was 9 of them. So 9 of those 12, you get to choose, and that's your army. And I really enjoyed how they each had unique abilities. There were like the Iron Cavalry guys that were very good in the open.
Yeah, very
still good fighting anywhere else. But then there was the guys that could shoot some archery, and the guys that would harass, and you could discover what units are hidden there under things.
Like scouting and stuff.
I had some pikers that they were really good on defense. Their die went from, I thought it was a D6 to a D8. And when they got attacked, when someone moves into their space, they got a free attack.
Oh, that's really good.
And I set it up a couple of times. It just never ended up ultimately working. But I really enjoyed that choice at the beginning. So each of us had some different options about how to build our own armies. And some of the other scenarios may have been like, you get everybody, but the one we had...
I also think player count affects that. I think I heard Ryan say, the more players you have, the fewer dudes you have.
And that makes sense. I mean, if you had, because I think this plays up to 5.
Oh, really?
If you had 5, and you each had 9 to 12 units, I mean, you'd be kind of walking over
There was
stuff.
almost, even with 3 of us, I felt like it was pretty all crushed up. At the start line.
Well, I felt like we didn't make much progress. We actually killed quite a few units, but they just kept coming from the north down the tracks, and it's like, How are we ever going to get...
I really liked that.
Oh, I did too.
I thought, yeah, we probably made it like a quarter or maybe a third the way up the board.
Right.
And
it was only a 3-round scenario, so
Yeah.
it wasn't like it was 10. The game normally goes to like 8 or 10 rounds.
I was proud of how much progress we made.
It's
though
true.
it
Yep.
wasn't the whole board. I was like, we kind of held it together. It was hairy a couple of times, that's for sure. But
No doubt.
I really enjoyed the kind of the stuff that we're doing, right? The waves of guys coming on, and you get to use your cool abilities, or it's okay. I got to get these guys who are really specialized against those, or they're really good in that terrain.
Yeah.
And then you had the terrain considerations, where terrain basically is just a limiting factor for how many units can go in there.
Yeah, I think the worst stacking was the hills. You can only have I think it was 4 or so units. So
well, then the swamps, it was like you really couldn't go in the swamps. So you could
right.
have one guy at best.
Yeah.
There was the way that affected the map. I thought was neat as well.
Well, and using those things, that's why it's really a war game, because you can use the terrain to your advantage. You can use your unit types to your advantage, get them up and get them in position to really intercept or wall off. That's ultimately what we do with war games. So I really liked that aspect of it, and it was fun. Like I had
it was
a
really
good
enjoyable.
time. We played for I think it was about 75 minutes, and we got through those 3 turns. I think we'd have taken longer, but Herman and Ryan were kind of guiding us through that.
Yeah, I think that's fair. We're famously quite slow those first few turns, especially when we're learning a new game.
Yeah.
Having someone else, especially as experienced as that teacher, was a great blessing to the speed of play.
Yeah.
We
It just
immediately
helped us move along at a nice clip.
Yeah.
But
it's because Herman was like GMing the bad guys, and so they were just they were like done. They just did their stuff.
Well, and he knew exactly where they were. Their movement priorities is based on colors of the arrows that are all over the board, and there's a lot of them. And he was able to go like boop boop boop, and I'm like, wow, he's got a keen eye, or he's played this 10,000 times, and he just knows where they're going to go.
I did think that was interesting when we were playing. They were saying that was the first time they'd ever played with the physical components.
Yes, because they do it mostly on Tabletop Simulator, I think, which is, I enjoy those online digital games. I really do. I prefer the tactile nature of the board, the counters, the dice. That was another really cool part. We haven't talked a lot about that, but the dice system is very cool. You have, I think your lowest dice are 6s.
Yeah.
6, 8s, 10s,
and 12s.
And 12s.
Was it 20s?
There are 20s, but they only worked on some of the spells. You could never increase a 12-sider to a 20. What you did, and I'm trying to remember the word they called that, upgrading?
Probably.
So you could get special abilities that allowed you to upgrade a dice. So if you were at a 12, you then got a 6-sider in addition to your 12-sider. So you never went to a 20, but that one spell I had, whatever that was called, gave me a 20, and I was worried to death about it, because when you roll a 20, you can get all kinds of results.
Yeah.
You can get a 1 all the way up to a 20, and I'm thinking, boy, I really need something that's going to be reasonable. I think I rolled like a 14 or a 15. So I was like, woo, But I love that dice system. Every unit was different. Every unit had different strengths. Every unit could, ultimately, if you had like spells or abilities or other things, you could increase the size of those dice. And that's always fun. It's just unique, right?
Yeah, I thought the dice, like you said, was really fun, because it's a fantasy game, and you effectively got to play with RPG polyhedral dice, right?
Yes.
And so you have just that extra feel, which I appreciate that designers are putting that kind of stuff in, right?
Yeah, yeah.
There's some fantasy games out there where you just chuck a bunch of D6s, and it's like, that was cool, but give us the cool dice. We've got them. Let's do it.
Well, and this game, it retails for $95.
Yeah.
We had a discussion at the table about that. There's a lot of stuff here, right? There's a great canvas board, lots of counters. I think there were 2 or 3 sheets of counters. All of these house, and you can hurt yourself with these.
It was a lot of counter sheets. It's one of their 2-inch boxes rather than the 1-inch ones. A ton of wooden dice.
But look at the dice. You get I think 3 of each type of dice. That's pretty, and they're nice dice. They're big and chunky. You got a lot of wood. I would have liked to have seen the price be down a little bit.
Yeah, we don't like to see that, right?
Sure, but when you spend $95 on this, you're going to get a really good game. You're also going to get a game that's very variable.
Yes.
And you're going to get a lot of mileage out of it. So you're going to invest in this, and it's just so fun that I could see players just, I want to play it again. I totally want to play it now.
And I presume that there's no reason you couldn't, you can, like, fully solo.
Yeah.
Right? You just
just
run
line,
two
yep.
guys or one big, I don't know what.
Because basically the enemy is just, you're just following those priorities and the cards. You know, when you pull the card, oh, we spawn a guy. Or we move guys. That's what you do. So you're really just in charge of the guys, the good guys on the map, you know, trying to protect the kingdom. So a lot to like here. I really, really enjoyed it. And it's funny, we play a lot of games for the first time, and there's always that moment where you're like, either I really don't like this. We have that occasionally.
Yeah.
Or there's that moment where you're like, wow, this is really good. And I had that feeling with this almost immediately. Really, after the first round, I'm like, oh, this is pretty fun.
I think, once we really started getting in and seeing like 2 or 3 different combats and then seeing some spells go off and it all kind of clicked together, I was like, oh yeah.
Yeah.
It was just having a good time. I think the only thing that I would say is you need to have your reading glasses.
Things are kind of small.
Some of the printing is very, very, very small.
I don't know if you can see that. The abilities for the units are pretty small.
I looked down at some of my guys. I'm like, what is that? That was the only thing I really struggled with. Everything else I felt was very clear. The numbers on the counters are pretty standard.
These are big, chunky counters too. They're going to really wear well.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
There's a lot to like here.
I feel like all of Blue Panthers, especially more recent counters, do that. Yeah. The lamination they've got on them, I don't think you're getting the same counterwear that you do maybe in good old-fashioned cardboard games, basically.
But this is a game I want to get back to the table soon. In fact, we even talked, maybe we'll do it tonight. We also want to maybe do the Plum Island Horror again, because that was also very, very fun.
Yes.
But one other comment I want to make, the fantasy war game genre, I've played quite a few of them, and I always like them, right? We've played War of the Ring. We've played Titan. Have you ever played Titan?
Yeah, okay. I think I played it once or twice.
Titan is one of my favorites of all time. It's just classic. And it's huge, it's trashy, and you're rolling a bunch of dice, but it has a lot of feeling that this game has. But the games that I've played are always, in my opinion, very memorable. Like, I still remember sessions from when I played Titan with our father-in-law, our brother-in-laws, and some friends. I still remember some of those 3 a.m. And I think this one's going to be a game like that. Different, a little unique, but I think it's a game that you can play this multiple times with people and get a different experience almost every time.
And you could also get that doing it on your own as well.
Yes.
Like, some of those games, it's got a solo mode in it, cool, you do the same thing over and over again. The amount of variety in here is if you did choose to play this solo, you're also going to get, a very similar experience. You might not have the same tension of trying to race against someone else.
Right.
And the threat of a little bit of PvP if you include that in your game, but you still have the immense pressure of what is a pretty unrelenting enemy, and a very strong one at that.
Very, very powerful. But yeah, this is a good game. When they announced it, I was a little bit hesitant, because I remember reading some of the initial marketing materials, and it seems a little campy. It is a little campy. I think the writing is a little campy.
I haven't read that, so I can't say.
But it works. I mean, it's just the setting, right? And that's not said to be a bad thing. It's just the style.
And I'm also a person where I think sometimes generic fantasy is kind of like, sure. Mm-hmm. But I don't know if I entirely... Yeah, there's all this stuff that they put in there, and you can read that, and you probably should, because a lot of effort went into it.
Yeah.
But the gameplay is so fun that, like, it would mask any deficiencies in, like, a generic fantasy that I might not be as attached to.
Once you ultimately start playing, that stuff isn't as important.
The game is fun, and that's what gets me. And it's if Herman's on it, I know it's probably going to be fun.
Yeah. Herman's going to be mad at me, but that when I was reading some of it, I was like, oh, that's a little campy. But that's fine. That's a style of fantasy.
I think that's what they were going for.
No,
right?
you're right. And you can, in the art style, it's pretty cool. The choices of the characters, it's a little campy, but I think it's cool.
Yeah.
It's a great little game. Really enjoyed it. Can't wait to play it again.
So yeah, Struggle for Zorn, the Red Blight from Blue Panther. Check this out if you're interested in it, especially if you like fantasy games, especially if you like a good solo fantasy game.
Yeah.
This is going to scratch your itch. But appreciate you very much for tuning in. I've been Alexander for theplayersaid.com.
And I'm Grant.